I work with children and adolescents here at Southwest Behavioral Health Center, and working with families, helping them address a lot of their, various psychological concerns that they experience, including anxiety and depression, as well as suicidal thinking and behaviors, which is becoming quite a significant concern. Now, suicide is actually the behavior manifestation of the anxiety and depression. So part of this is being able to really recognize these kids that experience this anxiety and depression. And there's three main factors that lead into the development of depression. One is genetics. And we know that if a child has a parent or a first-degree biological relative, that they're at 4 to 6 times at higher risk to experience depression, but they may not inevitably develop depression because there's other risk factors that include the psychological piece and the environmental piece. But the psychological piece focuses more on their coping skills. If there's unhealthy or poor coping skills, the lack of self-esteem, that's certainly going to increase their risk, so we have to address that. The other piece is the environmental, which is like school and family and peers and neighborhood and churches. All that has a factor in the development of depression. Some things to look for and watch. So one is to look for a change in mood that lasts for more than 2 weeks. Certainly, kids have grumpy moods or they get irritable. They may be having a bad day, they might say. But we want to look at things that are a consistent pattern over a couple of weeks. Look for any isolation. If there's a pattern of, they're withdrawing, they're not wanting to interact with the other students, not doing things that they typically like to do. Before you may have noticed that they were interested in doing, art projects or math problems or whatever that may be, and they seem to have lost that interest. They seem more tired, more sad or withdrawn or angry or irritable. You might also look for how they talk, in their speech or writings or drawings about death or dark kind of themes that you might notice. Look for any increase in negative self-talk. And so as we look at that and those warning signs, I want to kind of help you look at how the brain works in the sense of developing these symptoms. We also talk about, the importance of the intervention at this age. There's been some resiliency and some protective factor studies that show that some of these kids, now that they're older, discuss that a particular teacher believed in them or a family member believed in them. They simply did not give up on these kids. And in the famous words of a basketball coach, don't give up, never give up. And so, and that's one of the biggest interventions you can do, is to not give up on these kids. Because sometimes they want to give up on themselves, or they may feel like others have given up on them. And you may be the ones that reach them and have a different angle with them that connects them. Because they will use sometimes those intense behaviors to protect themselves, to connect, and to distract. But those intense behaviors is what backfires. We want to help them develop less intense behaviors. So just a couple other thoughts with some things that might be helpful and that might not be helpful. It's okay to talk to your student. Let them know that you've been noticing changes. Use open-ended questions like, how are things going for you? Such as, I notice you seem different lately. Hey, can you tell me what you're feeling? Let your student know that you're there to listen and support, not to judge or criticize. Offer your student choices. Let them know that you can, call their parent with you to get them to some resources that can be helpful, to the school counselor, who can then also identify some resources in the community with their parent that they can access services. Other thoughts is important is to know that you don't have to solve the problem. Some things that might not be as helpful are being aware of statements such as, snap out of it, get your act together, you shouldn't feel that way, you have too much to live for, you have too much to be happy about, get over it, I know exactly how you feel, if you just try harder, things will get better, you're being too sensitive. All those statements actually increase their feelings of guilt because they're already dealing with things that they already think that things are their fault. And so it's being aware of those statements, but only using encouraging and supportive statements to know that you're there to listen and to encourage. One of the thoughts I recently became aware of is that in one of the schools in southern Utah, at an elementary school, they have a thing that's called a friendship bench. And that bench is identified for those who are feeling isolated or left out of the group. They go sit on that bench, and then these other students come over and make sure that they're included. Now, I understand that that student has to go over to the bench to say they're feeling left out, and I just think it's a great idea. And even if they don't, there's still these other signs that you can be aware of that can help them feel included. And then there's also the example that I'm sure that you've all heard of is the individual that was walking along the beach and there was thousands of starfish. And he just started picking them up and throwing them, tossing them back into the ocean. And another individual came by and said, there's just way too many. There's thousands of these. You're not going to be able to save them all. And he picked one up and looked at the individual and says, to that one, it matters. And the idea is that we're here to help. We're here to provide the tools and skills. And as teachers, you have, a lot of rewarding experiences. You have some challenges that happen in your classroom with some of the kids that you have. And by being aware of some of these factors, some of these signs, some of these things that you can, take a step toward to pick up and say, you know what, to this one it matters. This is what I can do. And by doing that, I know that will have a big impact as we reduce the rates of suicidal behaviors and thinking as these children get older. And I thank all the teachers, the work that you do, and the interventions that you provide. And together, I think we can continue to make a difference in working with our children and helping them develop the healthy coping strategies that they're going to need as they face life challenges.